Okay, picture this. You've poured your heart and soul into creating, a brilliant podcast episode.
Right.
It's packed with amazing insights, maybe a fantastic guest, and then you put it out there, and it can sometimes feel like you're just shouting into this, like, crowded, noisy
Oh,
room,
totally. Yeah.
getting discovered and heard amidst all that content. It's a real challenge.
It absolutely is.
Yeah.
You've, nailed the audio part, which is the core.
Yeah.
But getting that message in front of the right potential listeners,
Mm-hmm.
ones who would love it, and getting it to cut through the noise where they actually spend their time online,
Yeah.
that's often, the bigger puzzle.
And that puzzle is exactly what we're diving into today. We've pulled together a stack of sources here, articles, discussions, analyses from folks, deep in the trenches of podcast promotion.
Yeah, people doing it day to day.
Exactly. All talking about how to tackle this. So our mission, to unpack the power of repurposing your podcast content. It's not just about making more noise. It's about strategically getting your best stuff in front of people in ways they're already consuming content.
And what really stood out, looking across these sources, is that repurposing isn't just like a nice to have. It's presented as pretty fundamental, like a core strategy.
Yeah.
And sort of anchoring that whole idea is something called the rule of 7.
Ah, yes, the rule of 7. Okay, it's a marketing concept that actually dates back to the 1930s, which is kind of wild when you think about it.
It is. But the principle really holds up. People often need to encounter a message like 7 times before they truly register it,
Notice it, yeah.
internalize it, and maybe feel prompted to take action. I mean, think how busy everyone's feeds are.
Right, exactly. And the sources make a really strong case that repurposing your podcast content, taking that core episode and spinning it into different formats for different platforms is an incredibly efficient way to hit that rule of 7
Yeah,
without constantly having to come up with brand new ideas.
exactly. You're just presenting your existing value in multiple ways. Yeah, leveraging that anchor content, as one expert put it.
Right. Turning one piece of hard work into many potential discovery points.
Precisely.
So, okay, diving into the how then. What are the specific methods these sources are recommending for taking an episode and giving it, well, new life?
Well, one of the most fundamental ways highlighted is creating social media images.
Okay, this feels pretty straightforward on the surface, but there are crucial details the sources emphasize, right?
Mostly.
It's about pulling, like, compelling quotes or key highlights from the episode and turning them into visually engaging graphics. The objective is simple but vital. Create something eye-catching that makes someone scrolling actually stop.
Yes, exactly. Stop the scroll. And the crucial detail here is tailoring it. One image size definitely does not fit all platforms.
Oh, for sure.
You have to pay attention to the dimensions needed for Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, LinkedIn, whatever.
Right.
Or your beautiful graphic just looks, well, wrong. Or it gets cut off. You got to test it out.
Yeah, you see that sometimes. And there's a great example mentioned from the SailGP Deep Dive podcast. They apparently do this really effectively.
Yeah. How so?
Well, they find enticing quotes, use bold, clear text, pair it with striking visuals that actually match their brand and topic, sailing.
Okay.
Make sure the dimensions are spot on for where they're posting Twitter was the example used, and consistently include their logo.
Or the branding.
It just shows that those seemingly small details, they make a huge difference in grabbing attention.
It's the difference between just posting words and creating like a visual invitation.
Yeah, exactly. Okay, so images. What's another visual format the sources put forward?
Audiograms. These are presented as a really smart way to tease your episodes.
Okay, audiograms.
Yeah.
And what exactly makes an audiogram different or, effective?
Well, they typically combine a strong static image again, visually appealing and relevant, with that distinctive sound wave graphic.
A waveform.
That sound wave is key. It's a really clear visual cue to the person scrolling that says, hey, this isn't just a picture. There's sound here.
Right. There's audio content waiting.
Yeah, it removes the ambiguity, like a little listen to me signal.
And the SailGP example for audiograms, again, showed how they used an audio snippet that actually previewed the episode content. We had that strong visual, the sound wave showing it was dynamic, and their branding. It gives you a perfect little taste.
Exactly, a little teaser. Okay, so moving from images and short audio snippets into something that's just, well, everywhere right now, video content, both short and long form.
This seems like a big one. What's the most common approach the sources mentioned for video? Is it complicated?
Well, the simplest is often just videoing the podcast recording itself. If you're doing remote interviews, record the video feed.
Okay.
If you're in a studio, set up a camera. Then you can upload that full video version to platforms like YouTube.
That makes sense. It's already kind of part of the recording process for many people anyway. But the sources really emphasize breaking that down too, don't they? Not just the full video.
Absolutely. Taking that full recording and slicing it into short, highly engaging video snippets for social media platforms is crucial.
Why is that so much better?
Well, the sources argue it's much more effective than just posting a link with text saying, new episode out now. I mean, think about it.
Yeah.
A 30-second clip of a surprising moment or an interesting discussion point, that's far more likely to capture attention in a busy feed than just a bare link.
It's meeting people where they are with content in the format they actually expect on that platform.
Exactly. The Open Metaverse podcast is mentioned as a show that does this well. They produce both the long-form videos of the full episodes and these short clips for wider reach.
And the power of that short-form video is really underlined in the forces, right?
Oh, yeah. It captures attention instantly, boosts engagement because it's quick and, snackable.
Mm-hmm.
And it has massive potential for shareability and even virality, which can significantly increase listenership.
And the sources even break down types of short-form video content ideas, too, like behind-the-scenes glimpses.
Yes, that humanizes the show, makes listeners feel more connected, helps build community, showing the people behind the mics.
Right. And guest features or collaborations are another great one they mentioned.
Definitely. Pulling out key sound bites from your guest not only showcases their insights, but can also leverage their audience for cross-promotion when they share it.
Makes a lot of sense. And they mentioned tools, right? Like Headliner or Wave.
Yeah, tools like Headliner or Wave can help automate turning those short audio clips into shareable videos, often adding cool waveform graphics and, importantly, captions.
Captions are huge now.
Crucial, yeah. And those tools can save a lot of time when you're trying to spin out multiple assets from just one episode.
Okay, got it. All right, let's pivot slightly, stepping away from the visual social feed for a moment. The sources highlighted something potentially less glamorous, maybe, but incredibly important and often overlooked, your show notes.
Yes. Neglecting detailed show notes, according to these sources, means missing out on some significant opportunities.
And show notes can mean a couple of things, right? There's the short description in the podcast app.
Like the little blurb.
But crucially, they're talking about the longer, almost blog-style post on your website for the episode.
Exactly. Those longer notes are where you can really add value. You can include the main discussion points, timestamps, which are super helpful for listeners.
Oh, yeah, I love timestamps.
Guest bios and links, maybe some behind-the-scenes insights, contextual details, links to any resources mentioned during the show, and clear calls to action like subscribe or visit this specific page.
Okay, so what are the big wins? Why put in that extra effort on detailed show notes?
Well, the sources list several pretty compelling benefits. They drive traffic to your website, which is your home base, right?
Right, the place you own.
Exactly. They can act as a central information hub for everything related to that episode. They offer another pathway for new potential listeners to discover your content through search. And crucially, they significantly strengthen your SEO presence.
SEO. Right. Getting found through search engines like Google, not just in the podcast directories. How do the sources suggest optimizing show notes for search? Is it just stuffing keywords?
No, definitely not stuffing. It starts with keyword research. You
Mm-hmm.
need to figure out what terms your target audience is actually searching for related to your episode's topic.
Okay.
This means looking at both shorter, broad terms and longer, more specific, long-tail keywords.
And then you just sprinkle those keywords
You
in.
apply them naturally. That's the key phrase across the sources.
Yeah. Good.
Use them in your show title if it makes sense, in headings throughout the notes, within the body content itself, and in the meta description. And yes, if it makes sense, and importantly aids accessibility, you can use relevant keywords in image or video file names and alt text. But the big warning is, avoid keyword stuffing.
Yeah.
Don't just force keywords in where they don't fit. Google's smart enough to penalize that now.
Okay, so the goal is discoverability by making your content relevant to what people are actually searching for, using the show notes as the text that search engines can actually read and understand.
Precisely. That's the idea.
Okay, so we've talked about creating the different assets, images, audiograms, video clips, detailed show notes. Now, let's zoom out a bit to the broader strategy. The sources make it really clear social media isn't just a broadcast tool, like a megaphone.
Not at all, no. It's presented much more as a powerful tool to connect, to engage, and ultimately to build community. Just blasting links out there, that isn't really a strategy.
Right.
Having a thoughtful plan for how you're using these platforms is
A content plan seems pretty essential then, based on what they're saying.
absolutely. Mapping out what specific asset you're going to post, where and when, each week gives you a clear vision. It helps you stay consistent, and it also helps you identify where you might have gaps in your promotional efforts.
And you really need to be strategic about which platforms you even focus on in the first place.
Oh, this is a critical point they make. Creating amazing TikTok content is kind of pointless if your target audience only hangs out on, say, LinkedIn or Facebook.
Yeah.
You have to select the channels where your ideal listener actually spends their time. The right platform might depend on the audience's age group or the specific niche of your topic, maybe.
That makes a lot of sense. Don't try to be everywhere badly. Be where your audience is and do it effectively.
Exactly.
And speaking of being effective, the sources stress differentiation, not just posting the same thing everywhere.
Yes, posting the exact same image, the exact same text, the exact same video clip on every single platform gets boring for your audience really fast. You need to tailor the asset and the accompanying text to the specific platform and, its audience's expectations. What works on Instagram might not land the same way on LinkedIn.
Right. And underpinning all of this, the sources really seem to hammer home consistency and authenticity.
Yeah, absolutely. Building a genuine connection and, a loyal audience takes time and consistent, real effort. It's not just about racking up followers.
There was an interesting example, wasn't there, from a Reddit user?
Yeah, that really brought this to life. They talked about posting daily on Threads, just about their niche topic, totally separate from their podcast promotion.
Okay.
And only actually mentioning their podcast maybe every other week or so. They found massive value in the genuine engagement and the community they built there.
Right.
Even if every single person who engaged wasn't downloading their latest episode immediately. It's about being a valuable part of the community first.
That's a really powerful insight. It reinforces that social media should feel like connection, not just constant promotion.
Exactly. And fostering that community engagement is presented as a core strategy in itself. Actively encouraging listener interaction, asking questions, prompting comments, soliciting feedback. It's vital.
How do you do that?
Well, use your social media, use your email list, use your website to create spaces for this. Dedicated forums or groups can work well for some niches too.
Engaging with listener-generated content, like if someone posts about your show, seems like a no-brainer way to show you value them.
Totally. And responding to feedback, whether it's positive or maybe constructive criticism, shows you're listening and committed to improving the show. That builds loyalty.
Okay, another strategy mentioned for reaching new potential listeners, particularly those already in the audio space.
Yeah.
Guest appearances and collaboration.
Absolutely. Guesting on similar podcasts or doing trailer swaps are highlighted as excellent ways to tap into audiences who are already podcast listeners.
Right, they're already converted to the medium.
Exactly. And likely interested in related topics. It's very targeted.
Now, while all these methods and platforms offer, exciting possibilities, the sources also provide a bit of a reality check, don't they?
They do. Trying to be everywhere, doing everything all at once is incredibly difficult. And honestly, it's a fast track to burnout.
Yeah, I can see that.
The frequent advice is to start by focusing on maybe just one or perhaps two platforms. Really learn how they work, build an audience there.
Get good at one thing first.
Yeah. And then, once you have that foundation and understanding, you can strategically expand to others, applying the lessons you've learned.
That feels much more manageable. And the sources also suggest having a central hub, too, right? Like a home base.
Yes, having a dedicated podcast website is seen as highly beneficial. It's your central point that you own, regardless of algorithm changes on social platforms.
Good point.
It's where listeners can find everything, all the episodes, the detailed show notes we talked about, guest info. And crucially, it's vital for building an email list.
The email list. Why is that so important?
Well, it's highlighted as one of the most valuable assets because it allows for direct communication that isn't filtered or controlled by algorithms. You can reach your most engaged listeners directly.
Right, you own that connection.
Yeah.
Okay, let's dive into the specific performance outlook for individual platforms then. According to the sources you reviewed, where should people maybe be focusing their video and social efforts right now?
Okay. YouTube is consistently highlighted as a strong, long-term growth platform for podcasts.
Okay, YouTube. What makes YouTube so good for podcasts specifically? Is it just uploading the video?
Well, it's more than that. Dedicating a YouTube channel and, importantly, using YouTube's specific podcast playlists feature seems key.
Podcast playlists.
Yeah,
Okay.
this tells YouTube exactly what your content is, that it is a podcast. And that leads to benefits like potential inclusion in YouTube Music, official podcast cards on videos,
Oh, nice.
better discovery features, recommendations, and improved visibility in search results on YouTube. They describe YouTube's algorithms as relatively stable, and its metrics as pretty accurate and helpful.
And what about YouTube Shorts, those short vertical videos?
Big potential there, according to the sources,
Huh.
especially for driving instant conversions, getting someone to watch a really compelling short clip and then immediately click through to check out the full podcast.
Okay, so YouTube sounds promising. Instagram is another one they seem pretty bullish on, right?
Yes, definitely. Instagram is described as a crucial platform and a significant discovery engine, even looking ahead into 2025.
Wow. What's the key to succeeding on Instagram with podcast content then?
Its algorithm seems to favor watch time and engagement. It prioritizes original content, and it boosts both Reels, those short videos, and carousels, the multi-image posts.
Okay.
So crafting those strong hooks in your videos or using carousels to maybe tell a visual story related to the episode, vital. And optimizing for Instagram's own search function with relevant keywords and hashtags is also heavily recommended.
Makes sense. What about TikTok? Still a major player.
Definitely seen as effective, especially if you're trying to reach younger audiences. The sources note it works best with videos somewhere between, say, 3 seconds and 10 minutes.
Quite a range.
Yeah. There's a practical note, too, about potentially needing a VPN if you're outside the U.S., but targeting a U.S. audience just because of how location data influences what content people see.
Oh, interesting.
And using the mobile app itself is often recommended for its editing features.
But did the sources have any, caveats about TikTok for podcasters?
One source specifically noted that while it's powerful, TikTok's algorithm is increasingly prioritizing its shop feature, buying products,
Ah, yeah.
which can sometimes push down non-shop content.
Mm-hmm.
They described it as maybe more volatile and potentially short-sighted compared to YouTube for long-term podcast growth.
Okay, that's a useful distinction. So YouTube and Instagram seem like key focus areas. What platforms did the sources suggest are maybe less effective for podcast promotion these days?
Well, here's a potentially surprising one given its size. Twitter, or X as it's now called, it didn't fare well in their analysis for actually driving podcast listens.
Really? Why do the sources think that is? That seems counterintuitive.
They describe it as having pretty little organic discoverability for external links, like a link to your podcast episode.
Okay.
And the audience, maybe because of the fast-paced, in-the-moment nature of the platform, seems less inclined to actually click away and leave Twitter to go listen to a podcast somewhere else.
Huh.
One example cited a tweet that went viral, got tons of engagement on Twitter, but resulted in very few actual podcast downloads compared to efforts on other platforms.
Fascinating. Okay. And Facebook, what's the view there?
Largely viewed as ineffective or even, well, dead for this specific type of promotion, according to these sources.
Wow. Okay.
Although if you share your Instagram content automatically to Facebook, it might get some visibility there, but maybe don't focus your primary effort on it.
Gotcha. What about LinkedIn for, say, more business-focused shows?
Mentioned as potentially effective for those business niches, yeah. But the sources noted it often requires a really significant time investment to see results. It's not a quick win.
Right. And Reddit, how does that fit into the picture?
Reddit is recommended, but not for direct promotion in general podcasting forums like, hey, listen to my show.
Okay, so what for?
Instead, it's highlighted as valuable for engaging authentically in subreddits that are specifically related to your content's niche.
So find the community already talking about your topic.
Exactly. It's about connecting with people already interested in your subject matter, participating in discussions, being helpful, rather than just dropping promotional links everywhere, building goodwill and credibility within a relevant community.
That makes a lot of sense. Okay, this has been an incredibly practical breakdown of the what, the why, the where of repurposing. But with all these efforts creating images, videos, notes, posting everywhere, how do you actually know if they're making a difference? What metrics matter beyond just, the download numbers?
Yeah, the sources definitely touch on measuring success, and they remind us that downloads are only one piece of the puzzle. Key metrics they highlighted include things like listener retention rate.
Okay, so are people actually sticking around?
Exactly. Are they listening to full episodes? And maybe more importantly, are they coming back for more?
That makes a lot of sense. How engaged are they once they start listening?
Yes. And listener participation is another big one. The comments, the questions, the feedback you get on social media, via email, or on your website. It shows the content is resonating, sparking thought, starting conversations.
And then there's the broader impact, I guess.
Right. Things like brand awareness,
Hmm.
which you can kind of track through social media mentions or direct traffic to your website. Are people talking about you? Are they seeking you out?
Hmm.
And of course, if your podcast has a specific goal like generating leads or driving signups for something, tracking the number of leads generated from these promotional efforts is obviously key. It's about looking at the overall impact and reach, not just that one raw number of downloads.
This has been a fantastic deep dive, truly unpacking how to get your podcast heard by intelligently maximizing the content you're already creating. It's really clear it's not enough anymore to just make great audio, is it?
No.
Getting it discovered requires a really strategic approach to presentation and distribution across all these different platforms.
It really highlights that repurposing isn't just like extra work tacked on at the end. It's an essential component of a modern podcast growth strategy. It's about being smart with your efforts to reach people where they actually are.
Absolutely. And, with the digital landscape constantly shifting, algorithms changing all the time, new platforms popping up, it leaves us with a really interesting question to consider, maybe as you think about your own strategy.
Yeah.
Looking ahead, is the most sustainable path to long-term podcast success primarily about mastering those bite-sized, platform-specific formats for wide discovery and, maybe viral potential? Or does building that deep, engaged community through consistent, authentic interaction, that stuff we talked about, does that remain the true foundation? That's a great question. The flashy versus the deep connection.
Yeah, something to mull over as you put these insights into action.